Yeah, that sounds like a plan.
Wow, this is the most planned we've ever had, eh? This is great.
Evolving. Huh?
Yeah. The best
You don't
part
want
is
to
that
get
we
too
have a
much
plan and it
plan.
goes sideways.
Yeah, right.
But that's what's fun about it, is that we,
Yeah.
let's see where it goes. It's casual.
You only take a plan so far when
Yeah.
you just plan on off-roading, right?
Yeah.
So
And it always ends up at the same location, cigars and scotch.
But it started there also. So
yeah.
It starts and ends there.
all right, good.
I like
Okay,
that.
we have a plan. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you catch your fly again?
yeah, I'm gonna catch the fly just like I do usually.
Josh, it's great having you on our podcast, Behind the Rack.
Awesome to be here.
How about you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background? Because I know you're the UC guy at Shure. Why don't you give us a little bit of a?
I'd say I'm a UC
Okay.
guy, sure, but I certainly don't want to minimize. There's other amazing people doing what they're doing on the UC space there, but yeah, my background is it's been in the Microsoft world my whole career. I'll just start there. I started military long ago. And they said, "Hey, you're going to do Exchange 5.5 email servers," and that just got me started on a career of Microsoft, right? Eventually, I came to a point as a Microsoft generalist to where someone said, "Hey, this Office communication server thing, this is part of the Microsoft stack. Learn that." And I became fascinated with the notion that you have this tool that's now combining all these elements of communication, and it really got me started on my UC journey. And from that point forward, I started to pursue roles and opportunities that let me focus in on being that UC specialist. And eventually, that led to me getting passionate about what I was doing, sharing that with the community in terms of writing like a free ebook and starting to do my own little podcast things and videos, how-to videos, unboxings, things like that. It led to me being admitted into the Microsoft MVP program, which I've been in for about 10 years. Keeps me pretty close to what's going on at Microsoft and that whole crew, and then of course in the UC space, I've worked at a few different manufacturers in this space, some of them partners currently at Shure as well. And so I've been focused in on telephony and most recently meeting rooms for the better part of the last decade, I'd say.
That's a little bit like what we're doing. We're having our own podcast because we're passionate. So
Yeah.
you didn't know we had a podcast.
It's the best way to share information,
Are you still doing the podcast today?
No, not really. I did a couple early on, right? And it was just like we were talking about this before we started filming, and you just kind of you have an idea, and I ran with it one day.
Yeah.
And I was like, nobody knows who I am. I'm going to get on, start a podcast. What do I have to lose? And,
Exactly.
And it was just like a weekly what's new in team, at the time, Skype for Business, then what's new in Teams. And
Very cool.
it was running one weekly was a lot of work, and I did it for a good couple years, and that's kind of a big part of what got into the MVP program. But after a while, I'm like, I can't keep this pace anymore, and you get busier with the day job, and so I still do videos, still product overviews and how tos, and here's this thing about Copilot or Teams or whatever it is, and but I don't have as much time these days to do the regular podcast thing.
Well, it's still cool that you're doing some videos, because I think we especially in this industry, we definitely need a lot more content in that regard. There's a lot of consumer based stuff, but on the pro channel or the commercial channel, not so much.
Yeah, there's a lot of competition on the consumer side.
Yeah.
So you get really high quality stuff, a lot of production stuff, but then on the IT UC side, it takes a little longer to find that person that's willing and comfortable with getting on camera and doing and
not being too nerdy or geeky about it, especially from the
If you
IT.
get too deep in the weeds on some of this stuff, it can get a little dry. So
Next thing you know, you got an hour and a half podcast and nobody's sitting there watching that whole thing. It's like,
I was just looking for a camera for the boardroom, and I just got into like VLANs and stuff.
That's what happens. That's what happens.
And maybe for the benefit of our audience, which is broad, can you explain what UC means and what it is exactly?
Yeah, so UC stands for Unified Communications, right? And these days you see it interchanged with the term collaboration and converged communications, and there's other buzzwords that are starting to kind of infringe upon the traditional UC space. But at the heart of it, it was unified communications, and it was exactly that. You think about the different modes that you'd communicate in: chat, calling, email, etc. This was a way to start to bring all those things that were disparate systems into a more unified approach to doing it, right? You'd see someone's present status in next to their name in the email app. You would be able to call them in the same application that you're chatting from, and it's all just kind of brought together. So that's kind of the notion behind unified communications. People got to a point where they're like, we're communicating across all these different mediums and modes within the organization. It can get confusing. It can be, what if we found a way to consolidate some of that and not just consolidate it, but integrate it so that before I pick up the phone and call, I can already see that you're in a meeting and but better yet, you're presenting. I really should not be trying to interrupt you right now. And that's kind of the point of unified communications, right?
Yeah.
And how do you feel that the pandemic was one of the tipping point of UC? Because I remember before the pandemic, you're right, most of these systems were separate.
Yes.
And suddenly overnight, like not overnight, but over 2 or 3 years, we now have rooms that can now connect to my Teams or my Zoom. How influential you think the pandemic was into that whole like convergence of all the systems together?
Yeah, massively in a couple different ways. Everybody's life changed, right? The pandemic hit. Yeah. Suddenly you hear it across the globe. You can't work remotely. Remote work is not real. You can't be productive with remote work, all the different things. Suddenly everybody is working remotely against their will. And the world kept spinning. Jobs kept getting done, productivity. Suddenly we recognized, you actually can be productive and you actually can. While you're juggling your kids being at home, trying to do school and all these other things, you're still managing to make it happen. So that shifted the mindset already. But it didn't remove the need that once things settled down, we're still going to need people in offices doing various things. We're still going to need meeting rooms. And now we're going to need to think about the people that maybe aren't coming back to the office. Now the reasons why remote work can't happen a lot of them were removed, and we're going to have a bigger part of the workforce that's spread around doing this new thing called hybrid work. And that was kind of the new norm. But the meeting room kept being a piece of that. It wasn't taken out of the equation just because of this change. It did mean that previously we had all these conference rooms that were not largely outfitted for video and audio. There was some effort there before the pandemic, but it was a slow uptick, right? And they were very expensive systems back in the day, very complex. Suddenly, the realization was all these rooms need to be outfitted, and now we need to do this in a way that we can actually pay for, that's doable in a time frame that isn't years from now because of how complex. They needed simpler solutions. They needed quicker to install solutions, more affordable solutions, but they all had to have good quality audio and video so that you could be seen and heard no matter where you were at, because the reality was the majority of you were no longer in that conference room. Maybe half of you were, and certainly after the pandemic, only a couple of you were. We now have more return to office mandates that are starting to stretch that out a bit. But even with those, you still have at least half your meeting that most people are at home, on the go, sales, they're off, talking to who knows who, where. So that was very influential in the rise of the need for a more sustainable and a more approachable meeting room solution across Teams, across Zoom, you name it, right? So
yeah, it was a great benefit. I think once it got so apparent that people had to start working remote, and I think a lot of manufacturers like, let's pour in some R&D in that division and let's start bringing up. And I think it led that there's so many people doing it that a lot more of I'm going to call it the conference room problems in terms of technology wise, a lot more apparent, and giving a lot more data to manufacturers to kind of fine tweak. And here we are today with some new tech coming in, and which is, I think Shure came up with the IntelliMix,
the Bar Pro,
Pro. And I think, would you agree that would be like a bit of a consequence of
driver?
Yeah, the driver.
Yeah, I mean, it was a new opportunity for a lot of organizations, right? Because again, you had largely complex, expensive systems for rooms in years before the pandemic. There were some solutions, to be fair. There were the idea of, Skype rooms and eventually Teams rooms. It was all coming around and it was getting there, but nothing really propelled that forward like the pandemic did.
Yeah.
Ironically, because the idea was everyone's being sent home. What are we going to do with all these meeting spaces? But the reality was we weren't getting rid of them completely. There's still some real estate shift. There's still some of that going on. People are figuring out how much they actually need there. But from the manufacturer side, suddenly there was all these companies that were like, we're making phones or headsets or things, and we haven't really paid attention to this because it's a fairly niche thing. No, it's no longer niche. The opportunity is widened a bunch.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about how to get in there. Well, once you get in there, you quickly realize, it's not as simple as let's put a camera at the front of the room and a speaker somewhere and everything's great. Like you said, there are a lot of data points to start bringing back to the manufacturer. What are the real pain points? And not just the manufacturer, the platform providers.
Yes, that's true.
Microsoft's, the Zooms, they're suddenly realizing, we're facilitating these remote meetings, but things are a little bit rocky when you're talking about people in that room right now. How do we work with our manufacturing partners to make sure that is seamless, that is crystal clear audio and video, and that it feels like a part of the cohesive solution, not someone cobbled together a solution for that meeting room, right?
Yeah.
But
this is where DSP get involved. I mean, who never had a meeting in the room that was too actually roomy or echoey or feedback? Like a couple of years ago when that whole thing started, I mean, you'd have nightmares in those rooms.
Yeah. Not every room is made for acoustic excellence, right?
And every room is different. Every organization is different. Every organization's needs are different. Who's having, little rooms with 4 people to 16 people.
Huddle room.
And that's what I noticed, going through the Shure product catalog, especially when we're talking about the UC solutions. There's so many different options depending on the room size, and it's so easy to understand. And now, even with the IntelliMix Bar Pro Kit, it's so easy to deploy. Right.
Yeah.
So can you maybe talk about some of the product offering that you guys currently have for those that don't?
Yeah. And then to the point, right? It's the portfolio is being built out to meet all the different needs. Actually, that's kind of where Shure started from, is in the UC space, is that while we had partners out there deploying room systems, they get to a size where the room is so big, these repeatable room systems aren't able to deal with the acoustic problems in larger spaces. So there's been long-running partnerships to where Shure provides certified peripherals for those spaces because we know how to tackle acoustics in large rooms very well, from the DSP side of it, from the equipment that sells, whatever it is. So that's it. Shure has kind of approached it in almost like a backwards way from other organizations, because they start, we're going to get a small room, we're going to meet those huddle spaces, then we're going to build into that a medium, and eventually we'll get to large just because it gets more complicated. Shure's actually starting from the point of, we've already tackled the large complex, now we're going to build a solution that scales downward. And so that's kind of how we've approached it. But to step through very quickly what that looks like from a portfolio side in the UC space, in the room space specifically, last year was the time where we actually jumped into the space beyond peripherals in the rooms and said, we're bringing room systems to market. And that was the IntelliMix room kits. And I wasn't at Shure at the time, actually, and I watched it from the outside looking in, and it was a kind of a big aha moment for me, because I'm like, oh, wow, they just stepped into the scene, not just with the room solution, but with a room solution for every single room size, including the awkwardly large spaces with complex audio. Yeah. That was kind of a mind-blown moment for me, and obviously an encouraging thing for me to have joined the team. So the room kits, right, they're designed to be small, medium, large, all the way up. They're all built on what we call the foundation system, which the beauty of the foundation system, it's a compute with that onboard software-based DSP and a touch panel. And it's meant for organizations that say, hey, we've already got an intelligent camera we like. We've already got audio in the place, whether it's third-party Dante or we've already bought Shure peripherals or whatever it is. We want to use that stuff. We have an ROI story to think about here, but we need a team-certified room. Great. That's what the foundation system does. Plug that in to your team-certified base, connect your peripherals, you're off to the race with a Windows-certified solution. And if you're starting from scratch, then you can choose from a room kit where you've got small, medium, large, and then complex large, right? Yeah. And we partnered with Hudley on the camera side for all those solutions. So MXA Nano 2s in each of those bundles, depending on room size, it's either 1 or 2, auto mixed with onboard DSP, and then the Hudley software on board as well to control the Hudley cameras and do all the cool things they do there with cameras. But then the newest member of the family is the IntelliMix Bar Pro, and like you just said, that solves the issue where customers are saying, that's great, but we want something simple, quick to deploy. We don't want as much cabling to think about. We just front of room, all in one video bar. What can you do for us? And so we launched our first Android video bar and our first video product at the same time, partnering very closely with Microsoft on that because it's built on MDEP, right? And that is quickly becoming an industry standard for an Android-based operating system.
Gotcha.
So
that is so cool.
MDEP, just what's the acronym? I don't want to put you on
Microsoft Devices Ecosystem Platform.
Okay, good.
Whole mouthful of words there, but and MDEP stretches across not just bars or Android. So it's the Android phones that are in the Microsoft ecosystem, or actually beyond Microsoft ecosystem, but Android phones, touch panels, schedulers on the outside of walls, all sorts of categories that they are now putting that operating system on. And the beauty of working with Microsoft in that front is that customers for a long time didn't trust audio. You know, they were very hesitant to get an Android-based conference room solution because security, primarily. Security concerns, it's Android. What about all the nightmare stories I hear about my Android phone being hacked or this or that? So they're like, that was a security concern. But when you can say, well, actually, it's not a third-party manufacturer-developed operating system, it's Microsoft's operating system. Maybe you've heard of them before. Maybe they've developed other operating systems you're currently using. Yeah. We can trust them, right? And that's largely what has happened. The customer is like, oh, if it's built on Android, we feel confident that coming from Microsoft, that they know what they're doing with security, with patches, all that good stuff.
Okay. And in that, because I'm looking at the system right now on my iPad here, but the panel, is it still running an Android? Sorry, is it still running a Windows IoT, or it's running an Android version?
That's an MDEP as well. Both devices included in the bundle. They're both Android-based devices. Okay. So that gives you the ability to connect over the network as well, right? Because you're a PoE connected device there. But that's, you've got the MDEP side of it, so that addresses those customer concerns. But I mean, honestly, on the geeky level, it's first video product. Shure's known for audio, right? Yeah. And this is the first time we've actually built our own video solution. So it's kind of cool because it wasn't just hey, we can make one of those too. It was like, we're going to bring video to the room, but we're going to innovate and make it truly, instead of going with the approach of let's make multiple cameras in the room and bring them all together and all the cabling and wiring and all that stuff, the installation time. We're going to take 4 cameras and stretch them out across the length of that bar so that we're capturing people in that room from different angles. And that solves for, I think about the problem where we're sitting in a long boardroom, right? And I'm going to zoom in on you as the active speaker, but I'm getting a quarter of his face because he's sitting in front of you. And I got mostly your face, but I'm distracted by his glasses keep poking in or something, you know? And now you're like, hey, look, because of the way the camera is placed at the edge of this bar, I can skip the distracting visual noise and focus just on your face. And so that's kind of the uniqueness, the innovativeness that comes with the IntelliMix Pro Bar Pro. But it's I'm just excited to see Shure in video. It's cool.
So not only you have ARRI microphones, you now have ARRI cameras.
Yeah, exactly.
Camera ARRI, sorry.
Yeah.
And I love the way. I know Shure's here, but I love the way that they did it because I love that philosophy of you don't always have to be first, but you can do it better. You can be second, but do it better.
Right.
And I think, and I've seen other brands kind of just say, we need to get into the game, not to be left out. And they're just outsourcing and just getting something at par, like everybody else's, which makes really difficult for me to sell, that proper, what's the value proposition. And it's pretty much the same, but when you have something thinking outside the box, that's really cool. It
happens all the time, right? It's a race to go to market.
Yeah.
And you get it. You make some headlines. It's a marketing play at that point. You're making a splash, first to market, innovating closely with blah, blah. And there's value there, but there's also value kind of sitting back, learning lessons, and bringing something to market that addresses the problem, the pain points that are currently being experienced. So, yeah.
I think also from someone who doesn't have a lot of experience with UC, and this is my own personal opinion, looking back at a couple of years ago, it was all about these, like you said, these complex solutions. Depending on the room, will we'll customize the solution for you. Don't worry about it. And they were able to come up with these solutions no matter what the room size was.
Often with three different manufacturers,
different support, whatever it may be.
Control system.
Yeah, and there's almost like this
programming
pompous, like, hey, I was able to put together this massive system that works. And now I feel like over the years, these complicated massive systems, yes, they'll still work and there's still a use for them. But the simplicity factor now is even more important. So I feel like there's been a shift, at least from my perspective, where it's like, hey, we need something that's quick to deploy, something that's reliable, number one, because we all know what a call looks like when the video drops. Yeah, it's not ideal. The audio is extremely important, right? You can still have a meeting when the audio is still on. When the video drops, yeah, it's not ideal. But now to have a solution where both are reliable and easy to deploy,
right?
That to me is like the magic sauce. That's what's going to make this, this solution easily available for everybody, and that's easily to deploy. That to me, the simplicity is like.
And those rooms they were impressive, right? And they have their place, like you said. They're just not scalable. That's why they weren't so pervasive. At 5 to 10 times the cost of a room now, you can't do that in 500 rooms throughout your organization as an enterprise, right? That's just prohibitive. So to be able to say, look, we can bring that cost way down, but accomplish what we need to.
Right.
Now suddenly you can say, okay, great. I can develop actual UC standards for my business. We have this size room. That's a media room. Great. Here's our solution for that. Go deploy. It'll take 4 hours. You got it down to a science. But you can't do that with those pre-pandemic, super large, complex. They're a project in and of themselves, right?
And to your point, too, the real estate that's changing. Not only is the real estate that's being occupied by the actual organization changing because of who's working remotely and who's not, but also the amount of changes within the actual physical building, from one room to another to changing office spaces. Now with easier solutions to deploy, it makes that flexibility factor all of a sudden really important. And you can do that with all these products. Yeah.
And not just flexibility, but the ability to maintain quality within that flexibility. Because, hey, let's throw some really trendy glass walls in there. Well, that's great for acoustics, and that's great for people walking by and the visual, intelligent things your camera's trying to do. And you have to make sure the solution is still flexible while maintaining quality.
Absolutely. It's very interesting.
Do you think with the amount of tech that's out there, and because of the pandemic and everybody's talking about UC and stuff like that, do you still think that people have a hard time understanding what they're missing out if they haven't gotten to a proper solution yet?
Yeah, I do. I do think there is still a you don't know what you don't know when it comes to that. And I think it was easier to not know that or to not be forced to be aware of it prior.
Yeah.
I think the shift we're all in now, where AI powered workplaces becoming the focus, becoming the buzzword. It is a buzzword, but it's also a reality. Whether we're talking Microsoft Teams, whether we're talking Zoom, there is a suite of AI-based capabilities that are they're beyond the buzzword at this stage. They are beyond the hot new thing. They are people's actual workflows are starting to change. And when you apply that toward a meeting, what does that mean? What does that look like? It means I expect to have a meeting where we're having a conversation and our focus is on the conversation and collaboration. After that meeting, I want to use all these verbal data points that prior to that in a meeting, this was a point in time conversation. Yeah. Well, do you remember when he said that thing? No, I don't remember that. That's a data point now, and it lives somewhere and it's usable. And generating tasks and generating documents and doing all sorts of things that now feed into how you work, what your job responsibilities look like. That breaks when you're not properly solving for every space.
Yeah.
Right? That you're like, hey, we had this meeting and I want to do this. Half the people in the meeting were in a room. Yeah, we don't have that solution in that room yet. So I don't know what was said in that room or what you're going to have to figure things out without. That's workable at this moment. But as a company gets further into establishing we're investing in this and it's part of how we work, that's now a glaring black eye. You can't ignore that anymore. So I think the ability for people to not know or not need to know has been more of a factor than it's going to be in the near future.
Yeah.
AI is changing the game there. And it's not even just not having the right solutions in the room. A lot of times folks will ask for BYOD in a conference room, and it has its place and it has a purpose for sure. Right. No pun intended there, but, I cannot, I'm still new and still getting over it. Like I just said, sure again. But you have these situations where with BYOD, that's a moment where, again, you've just broken your AI powered workflow. Right. And this has been a table stakes almost kind of piece for a lot of companies to say, oh, we want to check a box that says this, whatever solution has BYOD. And that's great. And again, it probably serves a purpose. But as you get a little bit further into the future and you realize we have more strongly adopted the AI workflow that we expect to be wrapped around our meetings, suddenly you have a meeting on BYOD, boom, you just broke that workflow. Right. So there's all these little things about the new era we're living in that is AI powered, where we're not just forced to recognize what we need in those spaces, but we're now forced to rethink the things that we're currently doing that we thought were requirements. Right. Maybe they're not. Maybe those requirements are actually muddying the waters. It's just a whole different way to think about meetings and what they are and how data lives in them.
So you feel that soon, not only it's going to be the norm, but it's also going to be a requirement. And when you talk AI, what I'm thinking about is having a recap of the meeting with very extensive notes. So you don't have to take notes anymore in a meeting. The meeting is recording, it's actually transcribing, and it's summarizing. So that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And creating tasks. You mentioned even possibly creating that. That's impressive.
All the post-meeting stuff.
Yeah.
But beyond that, think about the other stuff that's going on in that room that is becoming increasingly in focus, right? We go back to pre-pandemic days where the four of us are in a meeting room. We know who is there. Maybe you never spoke up and never said a thing. Now, to the outsider, they'd be like, oh, you weren't a part of that meeting. You weren't there, but you were. You were there. And with AI, we now, on the video side, can capture who was in that room and add them to the roster because their face has been enrolled.
Right.
So you were present. You know what was said. You have participated. That's context. That's a data point. Another data point is that's not quite a part of these platforms, but I very much believe will be before long is you didn't say anything, but as I talked about this controversial topic, your face changed, and you did not seem pleased by that. And leadership wants to know, what was the temperature in that room? Oh, well, he spoke up and voiced his opinion. That's a data point, but unless we're capturing your face and how you reacted, we don't have the other half of the story that actually it wasn't well received. He was very positive about it, but others in the room were quiet but unhappy. That's something people need to know, right? And so this is, I absolutely think it's.
I didn't know.
Me neither.
That's incredible.
It's a data point, and that's what AI is trying to solve for. So I absolutely think that to the point regulation in each geography allows, AI is going to become not just this is our strategy. This is a required part of how we do business. There's nuances there. Different geographies can't force people to enroll their voice, their face, or make that prohibitive outright. So I think there's going to be political things that shake out over the years that determine the path of AI. But 100%, the value you get from it, there's no turning back from recognizing that, right?
Absolutely. And obviously the quality of, we're talking about even something as simple as the transcription or task segment, or where you're getting after the meeting. That is only as accurate as the audio that is being fed, correct?
Yeah. Garbage in, garbage out.
That's right.
Correct. So that's where the quality of the components or your deployment or of your installation, that's what really matters. Because if all of a sudden you're having a great meeting, you're relying on AI, let's say, for the task completion at the end of the meeting. Yeah. But the microphone was so badly placed, wasn't calibrated properly. A junior person installed it, whatever reason. Well, now all of a sudden you weren't focusing on taking notes. You were hoping the deployment was, and it didn't. That's where the quality of the
failed at it. It just didn't do great. At a former life at an integrator, right? I had a lot of conversations with customers. This was before AI became a big wave, and the bar there to meet was, can I see them? Can I hear them? Good enough, right? It's good enough.
Yeah.
And even then it wasn't really good enough because I hear them as well as the keyboard clicking next to them, as well as the air conditioner handler going, but I hear them and I see them. They're grainy-ish, and that camera angle is just not amazing, but I see them. The good enough is when you think about in terms of AI, it's not. You need the best, you need the most intelligent, you need tried and true quality and reliability. So when you make choices for a conferencing space, you can't just say what's good enough. What can I see and hear? You got to think about, well, what does the AI see and hear, and what is the AI processing from what I'm delivering in that room? And that's because, and that's another almost another topic there that I'll touch on, and that with that sentence is that a lot of times there can be confusion or buzzwordy conversations around where the AI lives and what AI actually is.
Yeah.
Largely, it's not taking place in the room. Mm-hmm. The room is processing things to hand data over to AI.
Correct.
Yeah.
In the cloud on the platform side to do all the amazing things that it can do. So if that processing of data isn't optimal, then the stuff you're putting into your system is only going to, what you get on the other side is only going to be as good as what you put in. So do you want to say 75% good, it's 80% good, I'm comfortable with 90% good, or do you want to make sure that it's as close to 100% good as you can get, right? And these are questions that IT decision makers have to ask themselves today.
And you think IT are following? Like, I'm even wondering if corporations are even aware of how crucial the quality is or will be, especially when AI. I mean, we're having this conversation. I didn't even know anything about how audio and video can be used as data points, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But I wonder if corporations know how crucial the quality is, because I'm sure that there's some corporations that are like, you know what, I guess some corporations weren't properly educated on what the value is on some of the higher end systems. So I wonder, and they probably just put some normal off the shelf,
good enough,
exactly,
webcams.
Yeah. So I wonder if corporations, and if you're seeing it where, especially when AI, and you're saying, what's that time frame? You think it's a couple of years? I mean, you think there's going to be a re-education going to be needed?
I think we're still in the education phase there, right? I think that it's becoming known, but I think there's still a pretty big gap between those that are doing the evaluating within an organization about what they need and those approving the solutions in the end, because there's a justification that's got to happen in that gap about why we need to go this way instead of cutting some corners for cost's sake and going this way. You know, when you ultimately get those holding the purse strings involved, they want to know, we're spending this much, is it worth it? You know, I think there's still a level of education that is taking place. You see it across the industry. Multiple manufacturers are out there telling a variation of the story of why audio is better through our solution to be passed off to AI on the back end. And so, and these stories have varying levels of credibility and valid points being made. So what's happening is it's a two-step process. The organizations are having to continue to get educated on why it is so important in the first place. We're latching onto it probably over the course of the next 1 to 2 years. I think it's going to become less of an education thing. People just understand that's important and this is why. But in tandem with the education point, people are having to educate themselves on, well, how do you solve for the need for real quality level? What solutions actually address that? I hear 5 different people in a crowded market telling me, oh, you want the best audio for AI? It's come talk to us. They're going to have to wade through and do some actual learning, whether it's through hands-on POC programs, whether it's through whatever it is, to understand and learn. I hear the story being sold to me from around, but this is where I'm actually going to get a solution that is known for the highest level quality and reliability and audio accuracy, right? And I tend to think Shure can hold a pretty good candle there. So, yeah.
Do you think there's going to be a standard or something that people on the outside can measure to compare from one brand to another, you think?
Yeah, and what that looks like and how people measure it is, I think there's already been some attempts out there. You see it at trade shows and places where people are putting on little displays, right, where they're actually using a generic audio device and they're comparing that with their purpose-built, certified, really nice device. And sometimes the comparison is a bit of an equal comparison. Sometimes it's not a fully fair comparison, but the point that's being made and the demonstration that's being done is look at using a non-optimal device. Look at the real-time transcription being generated up on the screen here. Now look at us using the certified device. Look at the real-time transcription up there. So some of those comparisons are taking place now, but again, sometimes they're apples to apples comparisons, sometimes not quite, right? I think that over time we'll start to see those same kind of comparisons built out through different tools, not just on trade show floors, places where you can go to do some kind of testing or look at actual validation benchmarks that are a little more apples to apples and a little more, okay, here's this solution versus this is solution. And you're going to end up seeing probably similar stats come through when you're talking numbers. Oh, we had 98% accuracy over here, 96% accuracy. Now, is that enough to really make us change our purchasing decision?
Yeah, what does that even mean? Like that 2%?
And that's what you have to ask yourself. Well, that's still a really high. 96 is still really high. That's great. What falls into that 2%? If we think about that in terms of the transcript, okay, so it's a little bit less transcript that is accurate. Okay, which part of that transcript are you willing to be, which 2% are you willing to not be as accurate? Mm-hmm. Is it the really important thing that the CEO said during that meeting? Is that okay? Is it okay if that's the 2%? Because your CEO is a low talker and they said a thing and that's the 2% you're going to sacrifice. And now someone's going back to use that later on and they're lost. So organizations will face with this, right? They're going to see the data over time. We're at a point where we're starting to measure that in some ways. We're going to have better ways to measure it over time. And then companies are left with the very real data points of how much are you willing to sacrifice on accuracy? And it's only going to take a matter of a few high-profile scenarios where the little tiny bit that was off was the only part that really mattered in that whole meeting. Yeah. And boom, it just doesn't matter anymore. It might as well have been 2% accuracy rather than a 2% differential. Yeah. Right.
And do you feel, because we're talking about benchmarks or standards, I come from the post-production business, and we have some standards. We have like Rec 2020. We have different standards for video quality, for audio quality, like all the sampling rate and everything. You feel that eventually there's going to be standards, and I'm not talking about stamp of approval from Microsoft. I'm talking our system was rated X% in that testing benchmark. Or do you feel that's coming, especially that AI? And you said, by the way, I'm super excited about that conversation. But do you feel that eventually we're going to grade microphones, just like you said, by how well they transcribe that conversation?
Yeah.
Do you feel that there will be some standards applied to that industry?
I could see that evolving. I don't know what a timeline would look like for it, but I could see that definitely taking place when it comes to a third party validated, hey, this is the, you name the, just take a company that's known for being an analyst in the space, right? That is, we're an analyst. We give everybody a fair shake. We've developed a new standard, whatever it is, and this is what we're calling it. And here's where each of these tested microphones falls on that. Take it for what you will. All tests same across, in equal rooms, equal whatever. This is how they performed. I could see that, and I could see it holding some weight, or at least being a selling or bragging point for manufacturers, right? That are like, hey, we actually do better here. I think that, though, in the UC space in particular, there is so much weight that gets put on solutions at the Microsoft certification level, Zoom certification level, and then the organizations that are positioning those solutions alongside the platform, that I'm not sure, even when that standard is developed and that tool is able to be referenced, I'm not sure how much it'll tip the scales, because there is just, when it comes to UC, there's so much that goes into the platform level validation and certification that really becomes where you need to align yourself as a manufacturer, right? You need to show that, sure, you might get a certain score here, but we're passing this thumbs up certification level that's more in depth or more whatever from the platform. That's where customers, because so much, it's not even just a matter of whether or not they met the certification level, right? It becomes a story of, oh, hey, I need support from the platform now. Well, you didn't make sure you stayed fully aligned to everything the platform said you should do on a certification level. Yeah, you got a higher score on this third party test over here, but the platform is saying we now won't give you support because you didn't make sure you had a solution that checked all the boxes we told you to check. And that's just the reality of when customers make a decision about how they collaborate, it starts at the platform and then they add on the hardware after that. So you've got to adhere to the standards of that platform.
Josh, do you find the conversation around specifically that decision-making process has also changed now with the innovation of technology, AI? Like, has it gone from really like a hardware-based conversation to now this is how we can increase productivity? You're wasting less time. You're more focused during conversations, which allows for decreased meeting times. You're actually able to increase the amount of meetings now in a day because the space is being used less because the meetings are quicker. Like, do you find that's also changed, just out of curiosity?
It's definitely the effort has been put forward to make that be a change, and at the platform level, at the manufacturer level, at the marketing messaging level, it's all those data points are certainly being shoved way out into the public, and here's how you're going to benefit across the board. And I think that we have seen a number of stories and headlines and stuff of organizations that have adopted on various levels, bought into the story on various levels with differing results and different things that it's meant for the company. The ugly downside of that is, in a lot of ways, you say, oh, we've now adopted this much AI and we're reduced in this much reduction in workforce, and we're now realizing efficiencies on this level. Other times, I think that decision making happened prematurely. Big investments or choices were made in that direction. Right. The actual efficiencies that they bought into or thought they'd get weren't quite what they were planning for. Now, that could be an execution problem. It could be a number of things. But some of those companies have gone through a reduction in workforce and then rehiring in workforce because they realized, oh, this didn't quite solve the problem we thought we were solving here. So I think the story is still evolving on that front, but it is a factor now that's being considered. Companies are always looking, especially publicly traded, are always looking at, well, how do we increase profits? How do we bring down costs? How do we increase efficiencies and ultimately waste less of people's time doing the menial tasks so that they can do the more valuable value-add tasks for the company? I think they're seeing how AI comes into that play, and that is going to continue to drive their decision-making when it comes to the manufacturing, the devices side of things. But it is still a very platform-heavy conversation, I think, at this stage, right?
And I think it's an important part. Like, I don't think we should be necessarily blinded, by the whole AI conversation, but I'm just putting myself in a situation where if I was, let's say, CEO of a company, my IT director comes to me and says, hey, we got to redo our meeting rooms. My first question, and I'm taking a little sidestep here. If I wasn't technical, right? My first question is going to be, well, why do we need to do them? How much is it going to cost? And what's it going to change for the organization? And will it help the business at the end of the day? And that's where the answer has to come in is, well, they're easy to deploy, so we're not spending too much money to deploy them. The actual solution is reduced in cost. We're able to increase the amount of meetings. We're able to increase the efficiency of our workers in those meetings because of all the reasons we just explained. So that's why I'm wondering, like, how did that conversation change? So it's a very interesting perspective that you brought.
Right. And I mean, and the other part of that you mentioned, why do we have to make the change? Why do we have to swap something out or whatever it ends up being? It goes back to the evolution of the platform and all that you need to do on the AI front now, all that you're hoping to achieve and glean from that You now have to have equipment that does certain things and meets certain benchmarks in the room. Good enough, being seen, being heard doesn't actually translate to realizing AI value on the other side of it anymore. And that is driving refresh conversations but it's also driving ROI conversations, because it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to have to do this, if I'm going to have to do this refresh to make sure we're future facing and AI ready and all that, I want to make sure I'm not doing this again in 2 years. So tell me what that story looks like, right? And that's part of the conversation too.
So there's a much bigger percentile of people that you're having that conversation more with the group of getting a refresh versus just even getting into UC. You think that's a much bigger?
Yeah, I think
at this point?
the years right after the pandemic would have been, there was a really big uptick there, right? It was a kind of a boom time for organizations that were building room systems, because everybody suddenly was trying to solve for these rooms that we now need to be an equal part of the conversation. So there was that was where that uptick was big. That was a net new move. That was most of our spaces are not outfitted for video. They might have a star-shaped conferencing phone in the middle of the table or something, but that's it, Yeah. Now today, I think that there is still a push. There's still a very large market opportunity for a number of rooms that are still not outfitted for audio video properly, and or at all. Right. There's still a large percentage of those. I think that they're not as high priority as that big boom after COVID, but they're still there. So there's still emotion there, but there's a lot more. The dynamics of COVID was a rush. It was a rush thing.
Yeah.
We need to solve this. We need to solve it now. Yeah. What that rush meant is whatever we can get.
Whatever's available.
Yeah. Whatever's available.
Good enough.
Put it in there. And you cobbled together solutions that were good enough. They weren't always cohesive solutions.
Yeah.
And then chip shortages happened. People ran into problems there. So again, that fueled even more whatever you can get your hands on. Put some from this manufacturer, some from that. Well, all the realities, all the pain that comes from doing that, we're now at the realization point for that. We have been for a year or so. Managing all that stuff under one view of one single glass of single pane of view is not a reality. We can't. That's a pain point for the IT administrators. We need to update things, and because they're all disparate, that doesn't work. Because we cobbled it together, they do not integrate with the modern AI-powered workplace. So all these things are now fueling a refresh that I think is heavier than a net new. The net new is still there, but it's just slowed down. The refresh cycle is in front of a lot of people because they're cleaning up the fallout from the mad dash after the pandemic. So
that's so interesting. I would have never. And, the repair.
Yeah. I mentioned platform a couple of times already. I was curious. I have personally noticed here in Canada, or at least this is anecdotal because this is my experience, but I used to use Zoom pre-pandemic, or I was working for an organization that was spread across Canada. So we were already using Zoom. So when the pandemic arrived in 2020, so we were already on the bandwagon of doing Zoom calls, and so we were covered there.
You were early adopters.
I was literally an early adopter, but I noticed these days that there's a big trend toward Teams and Microsoft Teams. Do you feel the same from your perspective, and or in the United States, or what's the trend there? Is it just me, or there's a trend toward Teams?
Yeah, I think the observable or felt trend, again, product of the pandemic and all the stuff that happened there, right? Zoom soared. They rocketed to prominence right as COVID hit because it was so easy and quick. People were suddenly like, we don't have a solution. We kicked the can down the road on adopting this UC strategy for years. Suddenly we need it yesterday. What can we get up and running right now to solve for calling and meetings?
Yeah.
But that's all we got. Calling and meetings. What can we do? Zoom was fast. It was easy. It was quick.
It was already there.
It was there. They could do it. They could just make it happen. There was a barrier of entry that was super low. And so it rocketed Zoom to prominence, and it gave them the opportunity to start expanding into Zoom phone and meetings and all that. But again, as we got further away from the pandemic and as people started to realize, well, this is what we did in a rush, now we need to, the reality was there was a very large investment across many organizations in a Windows or Microsoft centric real estate, right? And there was some integration with Zoom there, but it's not native. It's not truly cohesive. So as these organizations go back to the drawing board and say, how do we try to do a little bit of cleanup to where everything feels manageable, clean, integrated? Yeah. And Microsoft tells a very strong integration story and has strengthened that story across rooms, phones, chat, emails, all that.
Calendar.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of organizations decided, okay, it does make more sense to us from a licensing stand, whatever the reason is, to kind of revisit things, go back in the Microsoft direction because they already were doing a lot of that. At the same time, I don't think Zoom's going anywhere, right? I think that there's still a Zoom footprint. It isn't the lion's share of the market, but it's still a very good share of the market, and they've built a good platform. And I see a lot of organizations out there that have decided to go in a different direction than Microsoft, even large enterprises. Hey, we're going to be a Google Meet shop, or we're going to be a this shop. And a lot of them have decided we actually feel comfortable with the integration between our chosen path on these tools and our chosen path for UC. We want to do Zoom for our UC, and we want to use this tool over here for our daily, email tools and editing tools and presentation tools, whatever it is. And they feel comfortable with that. So I don't think it's going anywhere. And Zoom and Microsoft have strengthened their integration points as well, which was a smart move, right across the board for both of them, because it said, we don't have to have it all. We can still work together, and it allowed organizations to still stay on what they preferred without breaking the federation relationships that they need with their partners in the industry.
Right.
Yeah. So that's my take on it. It's not a solid, I guarantee you that, but that's my take on what it looks like right now.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about spaces, especially in the corporate world or education or whatever it is, and we just talked about platforms. This is a perfect guest to ask your question. So it's twice now we bring up his question that we spoke about earlier at the beginning of the year for AV Trends 2026. What about heightening the experience for far end users? Do you think that's a manufacturer do you think that's something the manufacturer can help solve, or is that a platform question to help solve? We're always trying to solve or make the experience much better inside this, bigger spaces or even huddle spaces, but never on the far end. And what do you see?
Again, we're going back to the pandemic a lot in this conversation, but it's a great, because it was the catalyst for a lot of this change, right? Yeah. And think about the meetings, the dynamic that existed previously, and that was most of us are in a meeting room. And there's maybe one or two odd people. I don't know what their problem is, but they work remotely and they're the ones on the screen, but they're largely forgot about in this meeting. Yeah. They try to chime up here and there, and we all pause in the meeting room. And I'm sorry, did you say something? And it's kind of it was an annoying spot to stop and try to include the person from the far end. The pandemic flipped that on its head, right? And suddenly everybody, especially with Zoom, was used to seeing all these little tiles, and everybody had their own equal headspace, including all of those remote people. And so I think at that point, there began to be a focus, very largely actually, on the equipment that the far end user would use. And other manufacturers in the industry went to town on solving that, or already had some good solutions in place. Headsets, personal cameras, things that were required to make sure that they were being seen their best and heard their best, because they didn't have an IT organization at home saying, by the way, sitting in front of that giant window is terrible for lighting. You look bad. Stop doing that. And by the way, you sound bad when your dog is sitting there barking or playing with a toy. By the way, it's distracting when you keep letting your kids come into the room because you don't have your camera the right way, position the right way. All these things that people didn't know to think about because they weren't working at home that much. Right. Suddenly the focus was there. And while there was learning to do for how people structured their at-home spaces, manufacturers also jumped in and said, we're going to help you with that lighting thing. We're going to develop better personal cameras that tackle lighting issues.
Yeah.
We're going to develop microphones, then headsets that drown out the natural distracting noises from a home environment and help us focus on just you, right? Whether it's
cancellation,
exactly,
acoustical noise cancellation. And suddenly this is also, I don't know if you remember, but in the beginning, you couldn't blur your background.
Yeah.
That came pretty fast. Huh?
It did.
I suspect that was driven by some
very embarrassing situation. Right?
Exactly.
And that was a platform thing largely. There, hey, on the platform side, we got to do something about this before we end up getting sued or something. Because it's
people at Zoom all sitting in a room say, "Okay, we got to do something about this. How can we blur the background quickly?"
It was a major right, but that was being solved for at that moment. So whether it was the headset, whether it was a microphone in front of you, or a something that sat on the table for your speakerphone form factor, that would needed to be solved for. But I think that it was a twofold thing. You had the manufacturers suddenly realize this is a huge opportunity for us to start selling in this category a lot more. Yeah. Right? It's not just people sitting at their desks in cubicles. This is now a different set of challenges, a different set of problems, and we can work for that. The need to solve for that it fueled a lot of innovation there. And on the flip side, it also brought attention back to the conference room, because suddenly the term meeting equity popped up one year. And it was the idea that, well, meeting equity wasn't a concern when we were all in the conference room. We kind of just ignored that person and whatever, you're remote, who cares? That's fine. But then meeting equity became a deal, because after COVID, well, we all are equal. We all of us, all 49 or whatever the number of tiles Zoom allowed, we all have our own little space. Even though we're all at home, I am represented just as equally as all the rest of you on this call. It doesn't matter that we're at home. But the people in the conference room were now given that one little square. Yeah. And 15 people were jammed into that one little square. Now they're the ones feeling left out, not heard, not being seen, right? It completely flipped it on its head. So it became a manufacturer problem in terms of how we help everybody be seen well, heard well, but it became a platform problem in terms of how in this virtual hybrid meeting space do we make sure everybody is represented well on the display. Yeah. And that's not solved by the camera or the camera and the mics are involved, but how it's laid out and presented to everybody across the globe, that's a platform problem. So
hence the IntelliMix Bar Pro with the 4 cameras.
Yes, exactly.
One of their partners is Oddly Cam, and they have like EPTZ and they crop. So we're sitting 3 at the table. Their IntelliMix Room Kit, the larger one, has a large camera. I think it's a 6K camera, maybe, or
right there,
high resolution,
the L1, and
So we could be sitting 3 around a boardroom side by side, but we'd all have our square, and that's a pretty nice feature.
And the other at the very largest bundle there includes that Huddly Crew, which is the 3 cameras that are expandable and all that, but it uses software-based intelligence to decide which camera to switch to in real, like a cinematically inspired solution. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it was a meeting equity play, right? Mm-hmm. We need to make sure that we don't have a bowling alley boardroom that we're capturing from the front of room only, and we don't have views, and we need to see people at different angles, and we need to switch between depending on who's talking, who's making a facial expression, et cetera. So having flexibility is key now because of this flipping on its head of that dynamic.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't mess up the question, right?
No, not at all. You nailed it. It was perfect.
Like stole my thunder, but it was a good question.
No, it was a great question.
No. Of course.
Thank you for the kudos, the credits. I appreciate it.
Of course, because that was a great question, and he actually asked, and I hadn't seen anything on the market, and that was a great question. I didn't know, and you summed it up really well. I think it's a bit of both.
It's a balance. It is. Yeah. It truly is. Because it's, and I think it was a progressive balance, because at first you're like, oh, this is a problem for manufacturers to solve. People look terrible at home, solve that. And then it was like, oh, okay, they're solved for. But now people are almost forgetting about the people in the room. That's not something any of us saw coming. Yeah. What do we do about that platform? How are you going to fix this? We can't solve it from the devices side. And they're like, oh, okay, we'll change the displays and help out there. But now we need cameras in those rooms that actually can capture people, so that when we make this new display, it so it was this back and forth kind of yo-yoing of whose problem is it?
Yeah.
It's shared problem and shared responsibility there.
It's funny. Our last guest that we had earlier this week is more on the mixed reality.
Oh, okay.
And he was talking about
VR.
Yeah,
Nice.
and
That's different.
Yeah, we had talked about the corporate at one point having meetings, how to bridge that gap between the far end and the actual space, but try to convince the CEO to everybody wearing helmets or headsets. that was the big barrier.
The funny part is that guest Daniel, internally for his company, because they're so involved in 360 production. When they have meeting in, I don't remember,
in a virtual space.
In a virtual space as avatars sitting in a virtual room. That's
and the hands move, and then he was saying you can bring up a draw. Actually, you draw on the desk. You draw on the desk on your desk, but it shows up on the whiteboard,
the digital whiteboard.
There's some really interesting solutions in that space, and it's also growing and expanding. Right? It's so novel though. I don't think that solution is going away or anything. I think that it's like people are figuring out where it fits into the organizations. Because it's a lot of people are just like, look, I still want to see people the normal way.
Yeah.
But there's very real applications for solving some very interesting, especially engineering like problems when you can work in that kind of environment.
Yeah.
Right?
Having a 3D model in front of you, sharing with someone.
That's huge.
There's a
Engineering, teaching, medical, any type of mixed reality, or augmented reality.
But I like just having a conversation with Josh. Like I was thinking of back and forth with what Daniel was talking about.
Guests on the same call would be amazing.
But you know what? Like keeping the quality of sound from, let's say, a Shure mic, but having mixed reality like the Ray-Bans from Meta. So that when you actually see the person from the far end, so everybody puts on the glass, not the headset, but it's those Ray-Ban glasses. Yeah. But when you're looking at this guy, even though he's not there, he shows up in the mixed reality while keeping that quality of capture.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or that reproduction and stuff like that. I find that.
But even from like a technical standpoint, imagine you're able to troubleshoot now an AV problem. And you're able to see their perspective, their, the actual SKU that's having an issue. Then you bring up the SKU virtually or augmented reality, and look, no, you're supposed to be at this port and not that port. Like there's so many applications. I think eventually we'll get there where we're going to see a marriage of both worlds. Yeah. But I agree with you. I think it's very novel. I think we're going to get there eventually.
Right.
It's not going to go away.
No.
But we're going to find the exact implementation of
sweet spot,
eventually. Right. Exactly, the sweet spot of it.
Yeah. They're the kind of things, right, that get shown off on stages at big events during keynotes. That's it's a revolutionary thing. It changes the way we think about it, but the way it was originally envisioned as being the use case doesn't always pan out to how it's actually where the real value lies later on. And it's a bit of an iterative process to find that value.
Yeah. Look at the DCA 901. And that one's finding all kinds of cool applications. It's wild. Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. I'm still impressed.
Yeah, it's a really cool product. Actually, it was. Although I saw something online the other day. It was on LinkedIn or something, but it was being used in a. I didn't even realize this was a thing, but in a armor laden MMA match.
Oh yeah.
I was like, what is happening there?
It was a hot topic in our podcast.
Yeah.
Talking about the armored MMA.
I was like, it sounds great, but what on earth? This is a thing? Okay.
That's exactly what Frank was saying. He's like, armored MMA? I was like, I've never even heard of it. And I listened to some weird stuff on YouTube, find all these weird sports. Armored MMA is a new one for me.
Sound in that show because we only have 4 seats and there was 2 Shure guests, and these 2 guys, I was sitting behind the console, and when he started talking about armored MMA, opened on my lap and was looking at this.
Like, does it actually mean? Oh, yeah, it's actually swords and okay.
Ironically, no one heard of armored MMA, but after we spoke about it and we saw the video, you actually heard the armored MMA, which is crazy, but it's true.
Yeah.
Makes a difference, right? Hearing the swords clash and the shields and all that.
That immersiveness that it brings, and you just don't, you're used to watching things at a broadcast level for so long, but then when you actually hear something that makes you feel like you're courtside or something, it's like, oh wow,
it changes the experience.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It already felt like it hurt just watching it, just hearing it and getting caught. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That must have really hurt.
Yeah.
Coming to a close, but I want to ask maybe a final question. If there's one thing that the industry is constantly underestimating about UC, what would it be?
Oh,
that's a true question.
Yeah, that's like I'm gonna make you sit and squirm for a minute on that one. Underestimating about UC. Yeah, I guess that I'd say that they're constantly underestimating about it. I think it would just be probably the actual value of having everything in a consolidated space, ironically, right? And maybe I'm just off on that too. Maybe someone's got a whole different take on that. But when I think about it and think about the evolution of how UC has taken place with different platforms, different tools, et cetera, I think that the idea originally of let's take all this that's in different places and consolidate it and make it easier to, I feel like there's still that the intention was to originally encourage people to keep using all these different modes of communication, but make it easier for them to all live together. And I feel like it's never quite landed that way. I feel like end users, the actual use cases, have either never felt fully enabled to just dive into each of those modes, or that the solutions themselves haven't quite made it as obvious that that's available, right? I use whatever it is. If it's Teams, for example, Teams to me resonates very closely with chat and meetings. I've got phone capabilities in it. I never pull up the dial pad and just use my phone there anymore, right? I'll pull up my cell phone, and then there's an attempt to pull cell phones into that at the platform level as well. But I feel like there's elements of whether it's an adoption problem, whatever it is, the true unified nature of what UC is meant to be. I feel like there's always a struggle to really make all those different components be utilized to their fullest value and extent. I think AI is meant to try to help bridge some of that. One of the reasons I think I've struggled with it is because I feel like I know that I talked to someone about, I used it today actually as an example to prep for this podcast. And I was like, now I don't remember if it was a chat and I don't remember if it was an email. I know I had my talking points from
all the time. Yeah.
And I know that I got it from someone on the team. I think it might've been Scott, but maybe not. So I pull up Copilot and I'm like, look, I want to review the talking points for this podcast today. And I don't remember, I need you to find the talking points for it. And it starts to tell me what it's thinking. Oh, I'm going to look for the meeting on your calendar. I stopped it before it even gave me an answer. And I was like, no, it's not on my calendar. I don't have a meeting for this. It's happening today. You're probably going to find the context in my chat or in my email. I don't remember where. I think I got it from Scott, but it maybe not. And hit send, and boom. Everything is laid out beautifully. I didn't have to go searching. I didn't have to go digging. It was 2 quick prompts, and I had everything I needed with follow-up. Hey, do you want me to create a 1-pager for you to get ready for this? And I'm like, I'm good, thanks. But the power of it at that point was just like, that's where AI is stepping in and becoming a part of where I feel that weakness has been, is that for me, I've just always struggled with the noise in different directions. And as great as some of the integration has become, I still feel like there's separation there. And AI, I think, is where you can start to say, here's where I just don't know. Help me. And it's becoming more and more helpful to me on that. So I think that it's been underestimated or undervalued, or just not the right solution has been found for a while. I greatly, though, see AI as helping plug that gap.
Yeah. That's a great benefit to keep the conversation in one single platform. Is when you look for something, it's going to search the whole platform. And
exactly.
So whether it's Outlook, Teams, if you're using your phone on Teams, you're right. That's a very valid point. And
it helps. It helps.
The power of AI is there. Yeah.
And that's, to the point earlier you asked about the migration or perceived migration toward teams or there is value in being in a cohesive platform solution where everything is discoverable and accessible to the AI.
That's great.
Great answer.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was a tough one. I was like, how much quiet time is there going to be before I have an answer?
I don't know. We'll cut that out.
Yeah, I can feel it. I'll do it. Whatever you want. Let me know.
Yeah, exactly. Josh, thank you so
Thanks
much.
a lot. Yeah.
This has been amazing. It's been fun.
You blew my mind on a lot of different things. And again, I'm a little bit like Franco. Sadly I know a lot about a lot of different stuff, but UC was, I think, my weakness.
Yeah.
And I deal with it.
Helps then.
Yeah. Oh,
No,
definitely.
it's helped. It was good. Yeah.
Especially the trend wise. Like I always never took the time to look into it deeper and deeper. There's other things, other trends that pique my curiosity or more. But UC was this was
the traditional worlds of AV and UC are just they're blending more and more.
Exactly.
And so I think on the other side of the aisle, I'm having fun getting to know more about the AV world and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just the world we're in now.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
But
Thanks for coming, Josh. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
I'll be your love, I'll be your sunshine, I'll be your love, I'll be your sunshine.